Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Very well, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. Excited about this episode. I mean, every episode of Faster Horses is, I think, surprises us in terms of the things we uncover or the things that we stumble upon.
We're
Um,
certainly getting there, aren't we?
we are, and we've had a few guests that have been in transition with their careers, and um, excited about our guest today, Melissa Cartagena. She's I think a lot of people know of her, and I bet a lot of people have had the opportunity to work with her or meet her at events when she was with AutoNation.
Former
Um,
head of digital there.
she was the head of digital there, absolutely. Well, she's
And a
now.
massive job. Love to get into that.
I'm telling you, I can't wait to talk to her about it. But she's now the chief digital officer at SROA Capital, and she's leading digital initiatives for the company's Storage Rentals of America brand right now. And over the 20 plus years she's been working in this space, um, she's lots of the things I've read about AutoNation have included her name as a pioneer.
She was
And
there for like 10 years.
that's right. That's right. I mean, and you're right. The massive scale of that organization, 300 plus locations and 30 brands, and all the different ways that you have to measure that, all the different ways you could measure how that performs or doesn't, right? And what do you have to do with it? Um, uh,
The size. How many auto groups are that big? That you can count them on two fingers, essentially.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Well,
It's going to be
her
a great conversation.
it is going to be. It is going to be. So she's going to talk to us. I'm just going to read a couple of things here. She's going to talk to us about what she did with paid media, SEO, reputation management, connected television, and over the top. That's always that's a space that's still growing today, right? It's still maturing today.
Definitely.
Life cycle marketing, that lifetime value, all of that, right? And then she's been around in a few places working with not just automotive retail, but she's done work in real estate, telecommunications, and consumer goods. She's got she has a bachelor's degree and an MBA in business and marketing. So super excited to have her
I've
on here.
actually wanted to speak with Melissa for about 3 years, so I couldn't be more excited for
Well,
this
this is going to be a
conversation
treat
today.
then, isn't it? Yeah.
It's an incredible treat. I'm just getting a little giddy at this point.
Well, you bet. Well, I
Let's make
didn't.
it happen.
Well, and I didn't tell you. I just this last week confirmed that I'm going to be speaking at Autovate. Cliff Banks.
Cliff Banks.
Yeah, Cliff. He
We
had
got
me
to get
come.
him on this show.
We're going to get him on this show. He says he wants to join us. Autovate's a fantastic event. It is. To me, it is the best mix of investment bankers, a little bit of VC and PE professionals or executives that are there. There's a little bit of big tech in the room. There's a whole lot of big dealers in the room, and just folks I think that are on the money side of who's the tail or who's the dog in terms of wagging what's next with automotive. So.
It's the place to be if you want investment. That's for sure.
You bet, and I'm looking forward to it. And as we already said, having him on the show, there should be several big dealers in the room because it's big dealers that need big technology, right? And they need big money to do the things they do. Big. Speaking of big, it doesn't get much bigger than our guest today and some of the things that she's been able to manage in the digital space.
I can't wait to have this AutoNation conversation.
Right on. Well, yes. I mean, Chris, it's big dealers. I mean, the automotive industry, it's not just the OEM, it's big dealers. Talk about that. Guess who's joining us today?
The biggest dealer of them all, just about.
Just about.
We don't talk about those other ones that are those international locations, but
yeah, exactly. Well, who do we have? Hello, Melissa. Welcome to the Faster Horses podcast.
Melissa Cartagena from formerly from Auto Nation, but now Storage Rentals of America. What a name! I've heard your name for years. All due respect, on the automotive side,
Yeah.
as I've been kind of pursuing my life through data and analytics and digital and tier 3 and co-op and all sorts of interesting conversations on that side. And I'm just so glad that you're able to join us today because this conversation has me excited. I hope it has you excited. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Absolutely.
So why don't we get out the elephant in the room and let's talk about what you're doing today on the storage side, because I really want to get back into the automotive side, because that's where I think I can talk more intelligently. But what are you doing today?
I have taken a role with Storage Rentals of America as part of a company called SROA Capital, which is a private equity firm. Yep. They have deep roots in the storage business overall, and I took this role as their chief digital officer earlier this year, and really growing the marketing division here within Storage Rentals of America. We have 678 locations across the United States. It's pretty big. We've had some really explosive growth over the last year, and I'm super, super excited to be able to build a full team here that is just really going to change the way we approach marketing and storage, and really, level up and compete with some, pretty big names out there.
And those are corporately owned or franchise?
They're corporately owned. We do acquire businesses across the U.S. We have a full acquisitions team that manages all of that. And we go out and buy these properties, and we grow the business that way.
Wow. You got a lot underneath you then on trying to get all the digital campaigns together, understanding the customers across almost 700 different locations. Wow. That's an
what's
undertaking.
What's really cool about it is I didn't realize how, because I came from auto, but I also worked for a very large company called Greystar during COVID, and property management. So some similarities there. The hyper local activation that we have to perform for all of our facilities that we have across the U.S. is super important. So automotive understands that. And as I started to get into this business, I started to realize how many people that I knew in automotive that actually touched storage. And I had no idea that was the case. And
why is there such a connection?
Some of them have been actively, like some of these automotive companies that are out there are doing business with companies like the one I'm with now. So it's been interesting to work through some of the kinks with that, and then also be able to reconnect with people that I've known for years through automotive. So Reputation has a Reputation.com, I think you guys probably are familiar with.
Sure.
I've been working with that company for so many years. I worked with them at Greystar, I worked with them at Auto Nation, and I'm working with them again now here at Storage Rentals of America, which is great. The local SEO component, there's a lot of players out there that are tied to storage too, that are in automotive. So it's been interesting to bring in other folks that I have worked with over the years and have them continue to partner with me here while I grow this group and start doing some new things I think that the company has not really touched before. One of them being data, and really understanding our customer and our customer data strategy. So I'm excited about that.
What does data really look like currently? Now we're going to get heavy into data in the Auto Nation conversation. At least I know I want to. But what does that look like on almost 700 locations? I don't know the metrics. Like how many lockers? Is that the right word?
Well, we've got units. We've got units that are 5x5, 5x10. We have lockers. We have wine storage. You name it. We have parking for RVs, parking for cars. Like you name it, we have it. We also have commercial, so you can rent, corporate suites as well at some of our locations, depending on where they are. But so the clientele is definitely a variety of people that come to us for multiple reasons. We know a lot of the reasons why they come. One of the challenges is getting to know who they actually are. so that who these people are and how we need to speak with them on a regular basis and communicate with them on a regular basis. Everybody has a different reason why they use storage, and I want to make sure that we tap into what those reasons are when we actually communicate with them. So one of the things that we're working on a latter part of this year is really understanding how many customers we do have in our database, how many are actually active with us, how many are inactive with us, how many we can, just bring to be able to understand how we can find more like them and be able to pull information from an audience perspective so that I can utilize that in our digital campaigns as well. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. We have it housed in a very specific way, but there's sort of like an intelligence hub that we need to build and create to help us to get better, more targeted, and just be smarter about how we approach new prospects and previous customers as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you talked about, and you said it yourself, is understanding who is there from active and inactive. And the inactive folks will tell you just as much about themselves as the active, right? And because at some point they trusted you, they opened their wallet to you on a monthly basis, and they can tell you what you need to be looking for in the marketplace. Let me ask you this real quick, Melissa. You talked about getting to know them better. Do you see things like questionnaires, surveys, polling? There's so much you can learn from clicks and open rates and applications, right? There's so much you can learn from the general business and digital media, but are there things that you're going to do, I think, to reach out to them and try to frame a little bit better understanding of their preferences and who
their
these people are?
So that, yes, because I want to be able to personalize the approach, right? I mean, that's the key, is to help to personalize any kind of approach with a customer or a potential prospect, depending on their need. In this space, people have different ways that they think about storage, right? There's all kinds of different ways you could think about it. Some people will think it's an extension of their home. I'd love for them to believe that it truly can be an extension of their home. Through COVID, people moved all around, right? Because they didn't want to be in the cities that they were in. And some of them also, realized that even post COVID, well, now we're in these homes and we want to, be able to have a bigger house, but we can't because the interest rates are too high. So now what are we going to do? We have to figure out how we're going to live in this smaller space. So I need storage for that if I need to have an extension of my home and places where I can keep things that I no longer want to store in my home. And during COVID, it was, let's empty out this room so I can make myself an office because I'm not going to move anywhere. So, this company did really well through COVID, just like the automotive business did, which was very interesting. And similarly had some, years over the last couple of years that were challenging because of interest rates and people not moving around as much. We're starting to see some spark of hope this year, which is really exciting. But I do think that people have different ways how they want to approach a storage unit. I'm using one today, and that's because I've got too much stuff in my garage that I don't want to, like I've got Christmas gear in there. For me, it's seasonal. But for somebody else, it could be sentimental. One of the biggest challenges we have is convincing people not to throw things away and just store it, right?
That's right.
Hold on to those things and store it instead of throwing it away.
I'll tell you as I kind of think back through this, the customer journey, the entire customer lifetime experience with storage is pretty significant. Like I just moved my son into college, his junior year in college last weekend. And now we're local, so we didn't have to do storage, but there are plenty of kids that are flying in and they're putting all of their stuff into storage during college. And then, hey, you're moving into an apartment and into the house. And then, eventually you get down to the retirement age and you're slowing down and you're moving things around. There really are some significant lifetime events that happen that you probably are or will be mapping much more effectively as you bring these data solutions and platforms together to trigger those email communications and display campaigns and all that kind of stuff, or direct mail
all together, right? And it's the same situation with any business. You want to get the right ad in front of the right person at the right time, right? But you want to understand who your audience is. Like in the case where you're talking about college students, college student may not really be my target. My target may be their parents because they're the ones that are going to be paying for it.
Right.
With college
I know
students.
that. I know all about that right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then even after, like post-graduation, right? Post-graduation, I'm working with a gentleman now who's in that stage. And post-graduation, they bring all their stuff home. Now what do you do with it? Now you've got all their stuff. They're not in college anymore. Now they're storing their stuff at your house. So
I know what I'm going to do with
it. So, yeah,
Certainly.
it's definitely an interesting industry. And I'm really intrigued by the acquisition component of it, the investment component of it, the operations of it in general, and how we're able to go to market with it and the things that we're going to be able to do. I'm super excited. And I don't want to give too much away on what we're actually going to do, because I really do want to be a change agent in this industry. And I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen.
Well, I think you're heading in the right direction just from this initial couple of minutes chatting about it.
Yeah.
Great opportunity to switch over, but we gotta talk about AutoNation. Like that's a whole different world. You spent 2 different stints at AutoNation.
Yeah.
And
total of almost 9 years total.
9 years. And what years were these?
So 2014 is when I came on. And I went from 2014 to 2020. A lot happened during that period of time, where there was growth within my career and progression within my career there. And when I first joined the company, I came in to build the programmatic division, really when not many people were doing programmatic media buying in our space.
Right. So that's the kicker, and we wanted to get into. You came in the digital revolution in automotive. And you went through it for 6 or 7 years there, where before COVID, where, man, everything changed on how people did marketing. In 2014, 13, they were still having yellow page ads.
Yes.
And now 2020, 80% of the spend is on digital, right?
Yes.
Something along those lines.
Yes. So it's funny because when we first started the program, there was a lot of logistical things that we needed to do from a tracking perspective. How are we going to manage creative at scale for 300 stores? And then also abide by the rules, regulations, the mandates associated to each OEM, right? Like that was complicated in itself. 30 plus brands across those stores, it makes it complicated. Some ads you could easily create templates for with no issue with branding on it. And some you couldn't, because the luxury brands wouldn't include AutoNation branding. So we had to be very careful about that. But as we started to go through the process with doing the media buying, we started to find opportunities to do private marketplace deals. And we were CarGurus' first programmatic customer when they put up their programmatic division as well. We did media buys with KBB way back when, as they were onboarding new employees to build out that whole division to sell media. So we were one of the first ones buying that media with those companies on the third party side, which was really interesting. And they did really well for us, even cars.com. We did business with all of them, which was great for a long time.
How did you think about, sorry, Tim, I know you want to jump in on a question, but I am completely enthralled in this conversation. But how did you think about the structure of the staff? So you're dealing with hundreds or upwards of 300 rooftops, and you're trying to accentuate marketing down into 30 different brands, right? Like how do you structure yourself in that kind of a scenario to be able to deliver what the OEM wants, what AutoNation wants, what the local dealership wants? How do you think about that?
At the time when I was brought in, there was a lot of centralization happening within our group. So while there were still very much co-op programs that were out there in that space, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it wasn't as prevalent. It still was prevalent, but it was more that we were building it internally and centralizing it internally. So while I talked with our regional marketing directors, who was our direct conduit to our general managers, I didn't really have to ask for permission to do that through our store. Our store specifically, we were able to do that internally, but we would share the success of that through the regional marketing directors, and then we did visit several stores over the years to show them what we were trying to accomplish and how we were trying to get our name out there and how we were going about finding new customers and creating lookalike audiences to be able to attract more prospects coming in and also maintain our brand in front of those people so it's always top of mind, because that's really the reason why you do that. But it was complicated, and I was the only one doing it at the time. So it was a party of one that was building the structure for it, the infrastructure for it, the all of the specific ad units associated to it. The copy was very closely written by myself and the brand team as well that I worked with. We made sure that, legal was part of the mix too, because we had to have disclaimers in place. Like all of those things were accounted for. And I worked directly with that agency to be able to distribute it all. And we used what we called back then DCO. So it was dynamic creative optimization to allow for engines or machines to be able to help facilitate the ad units being, shown online at the time that they needed to be shown online.
Right.
I managed all the co-op on the back end too for it on my own. Managed all the pre-approvals on my own. I did all that myself until we actually built.
That's crazy train right there. That's crazy train. You thousands. I feel
thousands of ads. Yes, we would get millions of impressions off those thousands of ads. The iterations of them, right? So they were different.
You acted kind of like a benevolent dictator in a scenario where there was some feedback loops that were available from the GMs, but essentially you were putting forth the strategy and the infrastructure and the buying power behind 90+% of what's going on at the dealer. And I think you have to, right, to be able to effectively deliver for, again, AutoNation, for delivering for the OEMs and for the dealers at scale.
Yeah. And it was back then, it was so new, it was like this digital team, right, of me. It was very, very new. And, it took some work to convince people like what they needed to look at. And, in the dealer world, everything is all about lead generation and how you look at leads and last click. So in the space of programmatic, it doesn't work that way. It's very different. It's a different approach. There's different metrics that you need to look at. So if I was to just walk in there and say, okay, we're going to run this media and it's going to tie to a direct lead, I'd be shooting myself in the foot. That would never pencil, and they would be walking me out the door in a heartbeat, right?
Sure.
But there were ways over the years that we were able to deliver the value that those programmatic buys brought to the team. Now it's really a part of like everyone's strategy. I feel like pretty much if you're a dealer, you should be doing the full funnel advertising approach. So that is happening today. But back then, there were a lot of silos at AutoNation back then. Each team lived very separately. There wasn't, aside from myself collaborating with the brand team to ensure that we had the right messaging to put out there and the right disclaimers from a legal perspective, there wasn't a whole lot of internal team collaboration until several years later as we continued to centralize the approach within marketing for the teams. So it was definitely different back then. And as I was working through the process of the programmatic group, then Facebook started doing some interesting things, right? Before they became Meta. And they were positioning their product ads. They were called DPA ads at the time, dynamic product ads. It was really more e-com based. We worked really hard to try and get those catalogs into the system before they ever created an automotive inventory ad.
Totally.
And we worked with companies like dealer.com. They helped us test it. I know Lithia was in the mix with that too. It was probably us and them that were doing it at the time. And nobody else was really trying to. But we weren't just doing like general ads like that and then testing lead ads. We were actually started to grow it into a program where we can include our branding in it too, which became part of our like signature that not a lot of dealers were doing at the time. They were just running it without branding, and we were running it with branding.
Were you allowed to live outside of the certified digital advertising programs? Did you get special dispensation? because you were at such a size, or did you still have to live within those parameters set up by the OEM?
It depended on the type of program it was. So it was back then, it was very different that like in the 2014 to 2020 period of time, there were programs that we had to do. And then there were programs where we were able to sit and have conversations and potentially be able to run our own media and claim that co-op on our own. We did that pretty successfully with FCA at the time. That was called FCA at the time. With Chrysler, I can never call it anything else. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I know we have to call it Stellantis, but I never. It's just I'm old school. So we did from a perspective of like search. We were able to maintain our own search in-house, but for digital, in terms of programmatic, it was a little more difficult because of the 4 nameplates that were there. So we let that run through the co-op program. But there were instances where we were able to have very intelligent conversations and, be able to kind of wiggle our way around it. And then there were times where we couldn't. So it was really a hybrid.
Yeah.
Sure. And I would imagine too, you were, you noted in some of the things you shared with us that this was also we're not just talking digital display, we're talking connected television over the top as well, which is not just some of the things that concurrently Meta was starting to do, but we can call them Meta now, right? But what you were having to do, what you could do programmatically with cable operators, and over the top, that had to be a fascinating thing because when you were doing it, there were not a whole lot of people doing it at the scale you were.
Right. Well, the interesting part about CTV and OTT and all of that was throughout the years working from 2014 to 2020, I actually spoke at a programmatic IO event and met some people that were talking a lot about connected TV, and I knew we needed to be doing it. But I knew that there was also still this old school mentality of we still need to, keep our cable TV running, and we're not ready for we don't really know what CTV is yet, and we're not going to do that yet. And I brought a group in to AutoNation to talk about what CTV is and why we should be doing it, and maybe not doing it at scale yet, but let's dip our toe in and start testing how we can position our media in front of audiences that are of high value. These are people with high intent that should be seeing it and not just spraying and praying all over TV. Right. So we did that, and we started to test a little in a couple of different markets, but it wasn't well received until probably during COVID after I left. And then it was more well received.
When everybody was watching Netflix.
Yeah, very logical. Very logical, yeah.
So Melissa, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and they just started to do it then, but it was definitely separate from the digital team, which I didn't really understand why that was the case, because these are, you're utilizing audiences and you're able to actually track all of this, where in TV, it's very, very different what your approach is. So it was kept very siloed away from the digital team post 2020.
And that's exactly kind of the point. When you come back to AutoNation, you're coming back in a different space, right? You're coming back with different, right? Exactly. You have that too, but you're coming now into a much more beginning of a centralized data scenario, whereas you're talking about much more siloed kind of worlds. Were you able in your latest? Now you left AutoNation beginning of this year, right?
Yes, January of this year.
So going into 23, 24, 25, all automotive is lurching forward into, data-driven solutions, trying to get into the CDP world, trying to get their data aggregated in one place. Group One making efforts, Lithia making efforts, everyone kind of moving in this direction. Did you come back to a much different kind of architecture and how you were approaching using more data-driven solutions? Did you have more access to customer data at that point?
We did, but I'll go back a little ways, because before I left, we actually had, we probably did a lot more than a lot of other dealership groups did. So we actually had a customer database before I left, like that existed within our company. We had a proprietary CRM at the time, and we were able to pull the data from the CRM into a customer database environment where we were able to cleanse the data. So we were already doing sort of like I wouldn't call it a CDP, but we were already taking the
You're
approach.
heading in that direction.
Yeah.
Yes, we were heading in that direction. We didn't have an official CDP in place for deployment, but we did have the groundwork that was done. Like get right with your data groundwork, that was already done. There was a team in place that I worked very closely with. They developed that. They had managed it. They had been running it for years with a company called Epsilon. So it was already done.
Heard of them?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard.
Yeah.
So you come back, you have a growing data infrastructure. You're moving towards a fully implemented CDP. Like, how does that change how you approach your digital media buys, your audience selection? You start dealing with 300 stores. Is your overall structure still similar, and you're still acting as that benevolent dictator because you have opportunity now? You have access to all of your customer data and kind of an easier place to move the levers. Is that what it ends up looking like?
Yes, for sure. The good thing about it is we went through several different vendors over the years, but when I came back, Epsilon was the vendor of choice to manage the digital media execution. I don't know if you know the history of Conversant and Epsilon from years ago, but they had their own identity graph already built. They were building a CDP for AutoNation at the time, which was great. They had their own identity graph and worked with millions and millions of publishers out there. So one of the things that we were actually able to get better at was targeting customers, whether we knew who they were or we didn't know who they were, like known and unknown, because we could still find them even if they were unknown, just simply based on the data that Epsilon sat on and the identity graph that they utilized within the marketing that we did, which made it easier for us to be able to execute and also get us to a place where we could save on dollars that are spent on it too, because we didn't have the overlap with the third-party PMP deal buys that we were doing previously. Even though they performed pretty well before, they now were being dwindled down because we had access to our own first-party data. And we were able to find users that were prospects because we knew who they were.
That's right.
How many records are we talking about? Ballpark?
It's millions. They're
hundreds of millions.
They're in public records. You could. I'm sure you can probably read up on.
Probably figure that out. The scale is crazy impressive.
Yeah, it's definitely millions of records, but I wouldn't want to pinpoint to a specific number.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and today, I mean, you said you were moving in the direction of a CDP, and then of course Epsilon, by all intents and purposes, what Epsilon today still does, right, is a lot of things that contemporary CDPs can do, and I just think that it's going back to what you said 13 minutes ago when you were talking about it was just you and. You were managing the vendors and you were managing the orchestration of everything. I wasn't going to call you a benevolent dictator. I was just going to say, I was going to ask a simple question. It seems logical to me that AutoNation wouldn't have so much marketing presence down at the local level, but defer, to an overarching brand strategy as much as anything else that was doing local things. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. I think that one of the things that our stores, from my understanding, because I wasn't part of the operations team, I was part of the marketing team. They were able to do some like localized events, so like event marketing in their area, and create community and presence in their area. But what we were doing at the corporate level was keeping the brand where it needed to be. Some stores we were able to brand as AutoNation, some we weren't, as I mentioned before, because luxury brands we were not able to brand as AutoNation. So you wouldn't really necessarily know that it was an AutoNation dealership. on the outside from our ads looking in, right? You would just see what you would see for like a Porsche store or what have you. But we did have to consider a lot of local implications in our marketing. So we did have to work very closely with we had a local marketing team that partnered with all of our stores on, offers that would go out, as well as any kind of local activation that we may need to know about, so that we can incorporate that where we could. So it was definitely a delicate balance of working collectively with a lot of groups internally to ensure that we were putting across the name of the store and giving it its local presence, but also keeping the AutoNation name where it needed to be.
What were the KPIs that you were chasing? Like what were, if you were looking at campaigns or overall media spend?
It was leads.
I didn't want to say that. More from the digital perspective.
So from the digital perspective, we had to do things differently, because like I mentioned before, if you were to just look at digital from like a media buy or a banner ad, for example, you're not going to get a click through on that. You're going to have to use a view through metric. We used sort of an inferred, like assist kind of metric, where we can infer that a lead was generated because it was touched by a media ad. Like during the process of the journey, that customer has so many touch points and they're looking at so many different things, and there was assistance along the way. You didn't just wake up Saturday morning and say, I want to buy a car today. You were probably doing some research, and then there were things that were nudging you along the way, and those things all play a part and they take credit. So we had, we looked at leads in general. We did a lot of matchbacks from sales to our activation and where we served impressions. And we were able to determine sort of like an inferred lead cost rather than a cost per lead. It was like an inferred lead cost, which typically was much more efficient than even a paid search ad.
Super smart.
They were seeing the ads.
Right.
So that's sometimes hard to explain to folks that don't understand that, but that is the reality of media. You have to create the narrative and the story of how these ads are actually impacting the bottom line. And it definitely was part of the journey. So those were the kinds of things that we would look at outside of just like lead and, clicks and things like that.
Yeah. The inferred is so critical. And has been for much of the last 10 years, as so many systems quite simply give Google last click attribution, right? I mean, what shows up in your analytics in terms of what brought the traffic there is not always what it says it is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, the one thing that's pretty scary right now is the dependence on Google, quite frankly. And the fact that they continue we know that they're raising their costs. I mean, there's no way you could see it, but there's lawsuits out there that are talking about it. I mean, I wish that I wouldn't have to be so dependent on Google, trying to find ways, and even in this new business, to avoid that and that dependency, because it's a dangerous dependency to have.
It is.
So that's just something that's, unfortunately part of the mix right now. But I hope and pray that dealers think about, in the automotive space, where else can you buy outside of Google? Because there are other avenues to be able to generate traffic, even if it's incremental. And you've got to look at those things, because it can't just be all, Google ads.
I know we're kind of running up on time here, but I wanted to delve into one last thing, which was completely turn on the AI piece of it. How are you thinking on AI, or did you guys begin to implement anything when you were with AutoNation? This is 9 months ago, thereabouts. But how were you beginning to think about the orchestration, the data aggregation to be able to feed into any kind of marketing AI solutions?
We heavily relied on, obviously, the algorithms and the machine learning. That's been there forever, right? Yep. We did do some aggregation to help with improvement of advertising so that we can lean on some of that machine learning. But from an AI perspective, I think when I was there, it was still something that everybody was trying to figure out, like, how do we do this and how do we do it right? I'm not even sure that that's really to a place where it needs to be today. I mean, they're
Sure.
still using live chat, like some others are digging in deep to not use live chat. They're testing chatbots. They're testing actual AI conversation. There are companies like Full Path that's out there that's doing that today for dealers. At AutoNation, before I left, there was probably some buzz in the background, but it wasn't something that was really in our world other than what we were doing from, the digital media we were putting out there. So I can't really speak too much to that. I know on the ops side, they're probably thinking about it now. I mean, there's how many companies are out there saying, like, I've got what it is that you need from an AI perspective to fill the gap for you in sales, to fill the gap for you in service. They're all saying it. So we'll have to see if they do start to invest in that and get into that mix, because prior it was maybe some small tests here and there, but I don't know that anything was really rolled out to the level that it maybe should have been.
If you could say, if you were a consultant walking into a small dealer group right now, from a marketing perspective, what's the little nugget? What's the brand experience that you've had that you can bring to them that says, hey, this is something you really need to lean into. This is something you need to be thinking much more deeply about, because I've seen it from one of the megaliths here. This is something that can really impact your brand and your organization. What would you say?
Honestly, I would totally say that they need to really think about getting right with their data, because a lot of these small dealers are not doing that. And I get that there's a lot of companies out there right now, and there's a whole bunch of hype about CDPs and everything. And maybe that's not what a small dealer would need, but you still need to get right with your data. So at least fix that. It doesn't have to be this huge project where you have to spend millions and millions of dollars. You can do this on a smaller scale. There are companies out there, there are consultants out there that are non-auto specific, that are very, very smart, that can bring to the table the tools that you need to get right with the data without having to build this elaborate customer, database platform. You don't necessarily need that, but you do have to get right with your data. And if you could do that and do it at a smaller scale and really start to learn more about your first party data, that's going to go a long way for you. Because that's what you can model off of. And that's where you can find growth on that dormant asset that you potentially are sitting on.
That's right. Waking up that data, right? Waking
that's
it
the
up
best word,
applying
asset.
It. Definitely. Yeah.
I don't think enough dealers fully realize that their largest asset still is sitting in that data, and their ability to activate on that data is what's going to be the difference between super success and maybe flatline success certainly over the next couple of years.
I think there's a lot of confusion out there too. Like, it's been talked about for the last 4 or 5 years now, right? But when I worked at AutoNation, we had been talking about it for way more than that. Like, we had been talking about it since 2017, 2016. So now that it's way more of a conversation, it's very confusing for a lot of these dealers out there, because they don't understand the cost factor associated to it, which it does not need to be that it's not going to be cheap, but it's not going to be that expensive either. There are ways to do it where it's more economical. And there are these big companies out there that are throwing their names around. And I will tell you, they're good companies. Like, we worked with Telium. They're amazing. They're a great company. They have those capabilities, but they also have a price tag with it. And you have to consider, if they have a price tag with it, is there another option? And if you're talking to only people that are in automotive and you're not expanding to listen to others, go to other conferences. Don't just go to these automotive conferences, go to other conferences and meet other people that can build you the same capability without having to stay within the automotive world, because there are ways you can do that and not have the price tag associated with it.
I think that's a great point. Whether it's Full Path or an Orbi or a Telium or a Treasure Data, excuse me, from a CDP perspective, there are going to be small to large automotive to outside automotive, lots of things to talk about. And the CDP doesn't have to be everything to everyone every time. So that's actually a great thing that Tim works in a lot of the consultant walks in and works with dealers on the consultancy side to be able to build these kinds of overall data solutions. So better than anybody, Tim, that there's all sorts of ways to skin this cat, and we need to be open to them. I think it's great advice, and what a great way to put a pin in this conversation. Thanks so much for joining us. Great insights. Thank you so much for allowing me to real delve into some of these digital questions that I've been meaning to ask you for the last several years. So it was great to finally connect.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Maybe next time we can talk a little more about the OEM programs.
Oh my goodness. That's 2 more podcasts right there.
Happy to do it.
Thanks so much, Melissa. Appreciate it.
Thank you.